Good morning to all and welcome to particularly our officials from the Ministry of Finance Investments Division, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, and East Port of Spain Development Company Limited. My name is Senator Wade Mark, Chairman of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. The Committee of Public Accounts Enterprises has a mandate to consider and report to the House on the following: the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of all enterprises that are owned or controlled by or on behalf of the state. The Auditor General's report on any such accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements. And finally, whether policy is carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically, and whether expenditure conforms to the authority which governs it. The purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to examine the audited financial statements of the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited for the financial years 2012 and 2013. The committee is desirous of hearing the challenges being faced by the key stakeholders at the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited in an attempt to determine some of the possible solutions to these challenges. The role of the committee is to help the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited to improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. There will be a delayed broadcast on the Parliament's Channel 11, YouTube channel ParlView, and Radio 105.5 FM. Participants are advised that their microphones should remain muted until recognized by the chair. May I at this time ask members of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee to kindly introduce themselves at this time. Members?
Good morning, everyone. Member Sagram Singh Suklal here.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Laurel Zamali Singh, and I'm a member of this committee.
Good morning, everyone. Keith Scotland, member.
Good morning, everyone. Amrita Devanarayan, member.
All right, is there anyone else from our committee? If not, I will kindly ask the representatives from the following agencies, entities, ministry to introduce themselves, starting with the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division. Representatives of the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, you can now introduce yourselves.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chintamani Suku, Acting Director and Transition.
Good morning, Suresh Dan, Senior Business Analyst, Acting Ministry of Finance.
Good morning, Peter Gordon, Investment Division Business Analyst.
Can I invite members of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development officials from that ministry?
Good morning, Chairman and committee members. I am Claire Davidson Williams, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Michael Bing, Head of the Economic Research and Planning Unit of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anne-Marie Francis Charles, Operational Research Officer, 3 at the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development.
Thank you. Any other members from the Ministry of Housing or just 3 of you? Okay. And finally, let us go to the officials representing the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. I am Jeffrey Reyes, member of the board, and I'm deputizing for the chairman today.
Thank you.
Very good morning to one and all. My name is Anthony Ferguson. I am here representing East Port of Spain Development Company Limited in capacity as a board member.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. I am Deborah Thomas Austin, Managing Director of the East Port of Spain Development Company.
Thank you. Is there anyone else or just those 3 persons, Deborah?
No, good morning, members and chairman, members of the committee and chairman, Darianne Charles, Legal Officer and Corporate Secretary to the board.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mr. Huston. I'm the Manager of Finance and Administration.
Thank you.
Good morning, all. Alan Cunningham, Project Management Consultant to East Port of Spain Development Company Limited.
All right, well, if there is no one else, may I at this time invite the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Investments Division rather, to make a brief opening statement. Is it the Permanent Secretary or the person who is heading that Investments Division team today? Would you be kind enough to make a few brief opening remarks? You're welcome at this time.
Sure. Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to the committee. The Investment Division of the Ministry of Finance is responsible for executing government investment policy. Its mandate includes oversight, monitoring, and where necessary, the rationalization of government equity holding in state enterprises. The division acts on behalf of the Minister of Finance Corporation and carries out the corporate function. This includes representation of the Minister at shareholders meeting, establishment of new enterprise, and rationalization of investment portfolio of the shareholders. Thank you.
Thank you. May I invite the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, to make a brief opening statement.
Good morning, Chair again, members of the committee. The Ministry of Housing and Urban Development and its implementing agencies, including the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited, are committed to improving the physical and socio-economic conditions of citizens through public sector investments, particularly for those in the low to low middle income groups, as articulated in Theme 1 of the National Development Strategic Plan, Vision 2020, which is putting people first, nurturing our greatest assets. The East Port of Spain Development Company, or EPOS, receives funding from the ministry under the Consolidated Fund for its social programs and under the Infrastructure Development Fund for its physical infrastructure projects. The delivery of these projects is focused on improving the communities of East Port of Spain and environs, which goes from Charlotte Street to the west, to Mova Junction to the east, Belmont to the north, and Sealots to the south. The vision of EPOS is well aligned with the proposed plan for the development of the wider metropolitan district of Port of Spain and environs as a vibrant, resilient, and sustainable city in keeping with the philosophy of the UNDP's Sustainable Development Goals, Goal 11, which is to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. The East Port of Spain Development Company Limited is well positioned as a major player in achieving this objective. In so doing, a revised strategic plan has been prepared for the period 2021 to 2023 and is currently before the board for consideration. This is to ensure that the company's key performance indicators are aligned with its mandates and focus, and will provide a comprehensive and integrated approach to the development of communities of East Port of Spain and environments. The ministry continues to play a monitoring role and has noted that the company has taken steps to implement various measures to mitigate any event or action that will bring their organization into disrepute, and at the same time aid in strengthening existing policies and systems for transparency and accountability. Chairman, today EPOS has completed and submitted its audited financial reports for the period 2014 to 2017. The reports for 2018 and 2019 are almost completed, while the auditors has given April 2022 to begin the 2020 report. It has also engaged a qualified accountant as a manager for finance and administration, and an accountant to implement financial policies and procedures to address previous challenges of separation of duties with its requisite balance, checks and balances. It has also standardized its procurement processes in keeping with guidelines from the Office of the Procurement Regulator, improve its reporting commitment for timely submissions of mandatory reports for compliance and good governance. While there is still much to be done, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development continues to support the work of EPOS. Chairman and members, the team from the ministry is here today at the disposal of the committee to assist in providing clarity on matters relating to the audited financial reports for 2012 and 2013 as requested, and look forward to your recommendations to assist the company and the ministry in delivering on our mandate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Permanent Secretary. And finally, may I, on behalf of the committee, invite the Managing Director of the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited to make a brief opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman. The East Port of Spain Development Company was incorporated in September 2005 and mandated by the Cabinet to develop and redevelop East Port of Spain to improve economic, social, and physical conditions. The PS outlined the area of jurisdiction of the company. I would say that it covers over 6,000 acres and a population of approximately 76,000 persons, according to the 2010-2011 population and housing census. We also straddle 2 local government areas. That would be the part of the Port of Spain Corporation and part of the Samoa-Laventil Regional Corporation. And we straddle 4 constituencies: Port of Spain South, Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, Laventil East, Mova, and Laventil West. So the company's mandate vests us with the responsibility to design and execute a comprehensive development strategy for urban regeneration of East Port of Spain. And this involves staged development that would see the remediation and development of physical infrastructure, which, together with targeted social and economic initiatives, would ensure an improved and enhanced living condition for the people of East Port of Spain, while also stimulating socioeconomic growth and human capacity development. Our vision of a transformed East Port of Spain is a vibrant cultural center, an innovative and resilient economic engine, and a network of sustainable and desirable communities of choice. EPOS fulfills its remit of creating sustainable community development through its core business activities of comprehensive and integrated development planning, community engagement, and project identification, conceptualization, and implementation. We are pleased to highlight 3 things that we feel we've accomplished in the last few years, and one has been referred to by the Permanent Secretary, which is that EPOS has aggressively sought to improve its compliance with respect to audited financial statements. And as the PS reported, we have submitted audited financial statements for 2014 to 17 to the Ministry of Finance. And we are currently reviewing the first draft of the 2019 statements and the second draft of the 2018 statements. And the auditors are scheduled to come in April of this year to start the 2020 audited statements. We have ramped up our internal controls as we have progressed our internal audit work plan, and we are working consistently to implement the recommendations from the internal auditors. We monitor compliance through quarterly internal audit reports, which have been submitted to the Line Ministry and the Ministry of Finance up to December of 2021. EPOS is also pleased to have prepared and rolled out a number of policies. For example, a fraud policy, whistleblowing policy, updated our HR policies and procedures, and completed financial policies and procedures. We also have in place health and safety policies and, of course, COVID-19 protocols. We are currently finalizing an operations manual to clarify and document procedures and improve compliance and provide for quality control. We are also in the process of finalizing the special handbook and guidelines in line with the OPR's model. We look forward to our interactions with the committee this morning and to receiving your recommendations for how we may move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Managing Director. Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we will commence our formal inquiry into the statements that have been sent to us. But in doing so, may I say from the outset, in looking at the responses that have been submitted by the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited, you had inescapably referred to events taking place or events that had taken place in the period 2015, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, and even up to 21. So based on your responses to our queries and inquiries, members would be at liberty to refer to those areas that you have shared with us as it relates to matters arising outside of the ambit of your financial audited statements for 2012 as well as 2013. So I put you on notice very early that members would be actually addressing some of those areas that you would have raised in your responses so that the members and by extension the committee would have a better clarification as to the challenges faced or being faced by this very important entity known as the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited. May I, before I invite two colleagues to raise questions, I would like to ask the permanent secretary and later on the managing director if they can both elaborate on the challenges facing this company as it relates to addressing the almost inexplicable at times, but worrying delays in completing financial statements and submitting same to the Ministry of Finance and through the Finance Ministry to the Parliament. So we at the level of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee would have access and sight of these financial statements. So maybe I can ask the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development Permanent Secretary to just elaborate and further clarify in the interests of our committee and by extension the listening public as to what went wrong and how soon do you believe the Parliament would be able to have sight of the 2014, 15, 16, 17 financial audited statement, as well as 18, 19, 20, and of course, 2021 audited financial statements. So I start with the Permanent Secretary, Housing and Urban Development, and I would then ask the Managing Director of the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited to elaborate, clarify, and at the same time let us know how we can help you, the company, improve on this dismal record of performance as it relates to submission of your financial audited statement, which is in complete violation of the State Enterprise Performance Manual. So, Madam Permanent Secretary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairman, I would like to begin to identify the key issue of staffing for the East Port of Spain Development Company in addressing the audited reports. Over the years, the East Port of Spain Development Company has been staff, if you want to put it that way, for staff, our request for a structure for the company has been engaging the attention of the human resource development company, and that has been outstanding for quite some time. It has been the major issue because at one time the accounting records, as the committee would have identified in its last sitting, we would have lacked the necessary checks and balances because of the separation of duties. Over the years, we would have made some strides. We would have been able to engage two persons, management, finance management, and administration personnel who would manage the finances and who would assist with developing these reports. We would have also established the auditing committee for the board, at the level of the board, who will assist in providing the necessary support. So I would say, Chairman, mainly because of the staffing issues that we would have had, would have accounted for those outstanding reports. Of course, funding was always a challenge as well in terms of engaging the correct personnel at the correct skills level with the capacity needed for that purpose. As I indicated, we would have engaged some additional persons who would have helped. And this is where you would have seen the move to have those reports sent for auditing, and we're almost completed to 2020. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Madam Permanent Secretary, could you indicate in your efforts to address the severe staffing shortage in that particular company, as well as the funding, could you share with this committee what concrete measures were taken to address these shortages, both in terms of funding and staffing, and how were these concrete measures manifested? Can you share with this committee who you would have written to and when, and what were the reaction of those entities to your request as a line ministry with responsibility for this company? Could you elaborate and share with this committee?
Sure, Chairman. Before coming into office, the previous sitting permanent secretary would have held discussions with the HRAC in an effort to put forward the ministry's position for a staffing structure for the company. A series of discussions would have been held, and those were not completely addressed. Over time, and since I would have taken office, the company would have, given the change in the economic conditions, the change in scope, we would have begun a new strategic plan, which will speak to a more current and more resilient staffing structure. And that right now is being considered by the board. However, we would have gone ahead with additional funding received from the ministry, we have made requests for regular subventions. And based on the funding received, we would have been able to engage some critical staff that we felt necessary to move forward with in order to meet basic standards. So those are some of the concrete measures we would have taken and the successes that we have so far.
You did indicate that you had employed, is it one or two personnel within that company in order to address those outstanding financial audited accounts? Could you tell this committee how many new members of staff, given the funding that the ministry would have received, and through the ministry, funnel that funding to the East Port of Spain Development Company in an effort to address that matter or that issue of getting those financials updated so that you can meet your obligations to the Parliament and to satisfy what exists in the state enterprises performance manual? How many persons were employed and their occupational titles in an effort to address these challenges? Can you share with this committee?
Thank you, Chairman. The company will have engaged a qualified accountant as a manager, finance and administration, and an accountant, a qualified accountant, in order to address the accounting issue. I would like, with your permission, Chair, to engage Dr. Thomas, who can give us some more specifics on this matter, if that's okay with you.
Yes, let us hear Mr. Thomas, yes.
Sure, thank you, PS and Chairman. So in terms of staffing, what we would have done, as the PS indicated, we engaged the services of our manager, finance and admin in 2017, and that person is a qualified accountant, but we also engaged subsequently a separate accountant. So we have another accountant on staff, and we also have an accounting assistant who assists that unit. So once those changes were made and we had the appropriate oversight at the level of the board, we have been able to step up and make the changes that were necessary to ensure that the financial statements are ready. So statements are produced on a monthly basis and presented to the board. And we are in a position, as soon as our auditors are able to schedule us, we are in a position to respond to them and to provide all the necessary information to commence the audits. So at this time, we have addressed that problem.
All right, well, I have a number of other questions, but I know my colleague, Mr. Scotland, did indicate he has another pressing engagement. And I'd like, before he attends to those matters, to offer him the opportunity to intervene at this time so he himself can seek clarification or to ask the appropriate questions relevant to the accounts that we are examining, and also taking into account current matters that were made available to us by the committee, by the company, I should say, for the period subsequent to 2013, ending in 2021. So, Mr. Keith, Mr. Scotland, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for your kind accommodation. East Port of Spain company, I want to focus on the youth. How has the East Port of Spain company, or have you done an audit as to how many young people, when I say young people, I mean ages 18 to say 35, are within your catchment area? Have you done an audit? I noticed that you say you service about 76,000 people. I listened. Have you done an audit of, out of those 76,000, how many are young persons?
We would have that information, Mr. Scotland, thanks for your question. We would have that information coming out of the population and housing census that is undertaken. And so that will give us very detailed information. That's the only comprehensive data collection exercise that's undertaken nationally that will give us accurate data for every household in the area. And so, yes, we have that information by age group.
Right. Chairman, through you, so I want to continue with this questioning. Having that information at hand or available, is there any strategic plan by the East Port of Spain company that caters for and addresses specifically assisting the young persons in your catchment area on developing themselves? And when I say developing, I don't want to be nebulous. I want to be specific. Job opportunity, self-esteem, elevation of themselves economically and financially through effort and, of course, some assistance.
Yes. So many of our initiatives are directed at the young people of East Port of Spain. All our initiatives are directed at the population of East Port of Spain. And so, for instance, let me quote a few. We have a youth entrepreneurship program, which is a program that we do on an annual basis that targets persons in the region of about 16, 17, up to about 25. And we introduce them to all sorts of entrepreneurial skills and opportunities. Within all our programs, we do try to introduce some of the life skills in terms of self-esteem, conflict resolution. Those become an integral part of the program. So we have the Youth Entrepreneurship Program. We have done a number of vocational training programs that are of interest to young people, whether it ranges from focusing on culture and the arts, like our spoken word programs. We have agriculture programs. They're involved in construction skills training programs, other kinds of skills training initiatives. And I think more than anything, we encourage our contractors, who are usually themselves from East Port of Spain, to engage a percentage of their labor from within the communities that the projects are being held in, so that we ensure that the young people get work as well. And then there are a number of sports and other cultural initiatives that we are involved in that target the youth.
Chairman, through you, can I ask then that the East Port of Spain, Chairman, I ask through you, liaise, because we are very much interested and warmed to the idea of the development of and so is the chairman and all members of this committee, the gainful employment of time of the young people in East Port of Spain. Can I ask that at least after this meeting, through the good and efficient staff of this Joint Select Committee, that you liaise with my office so we can have some synergies? That's the first thing. Chairman, may I ask through you, what has the impact of COVID-19 have on your operations? And I ask this also for the Ministry of Housing. What has been the impact of COVID-19?
Can I respond? Yes. Specifically, COVID has affected us. We have had at least one member of staff who has tested positive, so we had to deal with that. We have had staff members who've had to be on quarantine because of exposure to COVID-19. And so with our existing human resource challenges, that has posed a particular problem for us when people are off for a couple of weeks because of quarantine. We have also had to make some arrangements with existing staff to allow for work from home arrangements, especially during 2020 and 2021, when schools were closed and parents with young children who were primary school age and who were not at school and could not take them to daycare because those facilities were also closed. We had to arrange work from home arrangements to allow those parents to share responsibilities for their children. One of the ways in which it has affected us as well is in the cost of our development projects. So with the increases in the price of materials and the difficulties with the supply chain, that has affected our contractors and their ability to deliver their projects on time and within budget. they have had to incur some additional costs, some of which they have approached the company to bear. So those are the ways in which primarily that COVID-19 has affected us. I should also say that in terms of the communities that we serve, the residents of East Port of Spain themselves have been affected, and the company has sought to reach out to those residents to try to provide some social protection and support.
Chairman, through you again, you are aware, and this also goes to the Ministry of Housing and the East Port of Spain, that there is in train the revitalization of Port of Spain project. How does the East Port of Spain company see itself aligning with that plan?
We see ourselves very much aligned with it. As I said, based on the mandate of the company, our work is really the transformation and the regeneration of East Port of Spain. That's the mandate that the company has been given. And so we see ourselves very much aligned in terms of the geographical area that we cover, the development strategy that the company has articulated for East Port of Spain, which is reflected in a development plan for East Port of Spain. And we do a lot of collaboration with other agencies, working with whether it's planning agencies, the Road to Recovery Committee, with the MPs and councillors in the area in terms of what that strategy for regeneration is and how it fits into how East Port of Spain Development Company can fit into it. So we certainly have done some work in identifying that an overall strategy and specific development initiatives that could further the regeneration of East Port of Spain.
To Chairman, again, through you, to the Ministry of Housing and maybe to East Port of Spain, are there any short to medium term plan for the construction or development of housing projects for East Port of Spain? The committee is very much interested in knowing of this. And what are they?
Yes, may I ask the Permanent Secretary of Housing and Urban Development to assist in clarifying?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. And Chairman, if I may just step back to the question with regard to the impact of COVID first on the ministry. Like other ministries, COVID has impacted our productivity and capacity to deliver as persons became positive or contact with positive persons. It would have affected our productivity, it would have affected our ability, the ability of our project team to visit and do their regular monitoring of projects, etc. And certainly it would have slowed down the construction sector to impact on us. With regard to housing in the Port of Spain area, there are considerations for improvement in the housing stock in the area. But Chairman, I would not have those specific information. That would mainly reside with the Housing Development Corporation. And if it pleases the committee, we can provide that at a later date.
Chairman, would you require it at a later date in writing, Chair?
Yes, I would like to ask the Permanent Secretary if she can submit in writing to this committee those programs and plans as she outlined earlier. So could you submit, Permanent Secretary, in writing to this committee so that the committee could be apprised of your plans and programs?
Chairman, I go to the script, and under the responses that we looked at the efficiency of East Port of Spain, and I want to direct it also to the Permanent Secretary. What can you tell this committee, in your views, can be done to make both the ministry and the East Port of Spain Development Company more efficient in its operations, particularly now that we are facing very stringent economic times and we are still in a time of uncertainty as it relates to this global pandemic? What can be done to improve your efficiency? Chairman, that piggybacks on one of the areas that you were making an inquiry into.
Thank you, Member. Chairman, I would like to suggest that in our activities, the East Port of Spain and the ministry certainly can work closer together in order to improve delivery. And I say closer in terms of our projects. We have already started those arrangements where we have more frequent meetings in order to align the work of the ministry and the East Port of Spain Development Company. And I say that with regard to our project units, and have a closer collaboration with the project unit of the ministry and the team at East Port of Spain to ensure that we provide the necessary support and we know beforehand some of the projects that are being implemented, or that we share information with regard to other agencies, because what we would have recognized is that other agencies, even under the ministry, may have other activities and programs within East Port of Spain area that may also impact on what is being done by the East Port of Spain company. And therefore, we have been engage in further conversations and increase our collaboration to ensure the synergy is created between all our agencies and to facilitate a better delivery of our services.
Chairman, I have one more question. I don't wish to hog your committee's time, but if all goes well and others ask, you are. And I will stay on, Chairman. This is a very important meeting. I will make arrangements for my other commitments. This is a very important meeting. Can I ask the East Port of Spain company and maybe also the ministry, what plans do you have in place in meeting your management goals and objectives? And I say this because I hear you with your plans and the projects that you have and the initiatives. But if you understand the ethos of East Port of Spain, because of several factors sometimes, you may have to go into these communities, so you have your offices there, you have your headquarters, and you have these plans. But with some of them, so for example, Chairman, in the vaccination program, I had to go into the community, take the CMO, take the doctors, and go into C-lots, go into the areas and meet the people. It is in that context that I ask you, so it's really two questions in one. What plans do you have to improve your management strategy that you achieve your goals? And do you have plans to come out of where you are and reach the people so these projects can reach and touch and affect lives? Two questions.
Thank you, Mr. Scotland. In terms of our management strategy, we are very, very much involved in ensuring that we adopt a participatory approach, that we are engaged with the communities, that we have our staff working on different ways of measuring our effectiveness, measuring our performance, monitoring that. And through our new strategic plan, we would be doing a lot more in terms of dealing with those kinds of issues. I think getting out and engaging the communities is one of the strong points of the East Port of Spain Development Company. We have been doing this for a number of years. So in the preparation of our development strategy, we would have gone into each and every community of East Port of Spain and met with residents on more than one occasion to understand their issues, their challenges, and to hear from them what they would like to see happen in their communities. They're the ones who report to us on the projects and initiatives that they would like to see, the social and economic programs, and the other kinds of initiatives that they would want to participate in. So we engage with them. We have community working groups. We go out and meet with the people. Our staff are on the ground all the time, every day in the communities of East Port of Spain. And we hear back from people, and those are the initiatives that we try to implement for their benefit at their request. So our strategy is really one of engaging and collaborating and partnering, not just with the residents and the groups within the East Port of Spain area, but with other stakeholders who are active in the area and who also have a mandate to carry out development initiatives that will support the people of East Port of Spain.
Yeah. Mr. Scotland?
Chair.
All right, so can I proceed and I'll come back to you?
Yeah, I wish to thank you very kindly, and I am on, I'm not leaving.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Scotland. May I ask, and I'll come back to it, but I just want to put both the managing director and the permanent secretary on notice that we will need some clarification as we proceed. For example, Mr. Scotland raised the issue of the impact of your programs and your plans, particularly on the young people in the Port of Spain East community. And I don't think that we have gotten the answer in a way that is desirable, in the sense that what impact, and that is in concrete terms, your projects and plans have had on these young people, in particular in the Port of Spain East area. And you refer to the 2010 population census. Now we are now in 2022, and as you are aware, Managing Director, every 10 years under our laws, we are supposed to conduct a population census. So the 2010 census is dated. And if you are working on 2010, it would not reflect 2020, 2019 reality. And more so as we go into 2022 period. So that's another area I would like us to get some answers on as we come back to you a little later. I would like to ask Mrs. Sagram Singh, who indicated she would like to raise one or two areas before she moves on to another commitment to come in at this time. Mrs. Sagram Singh.
Thank you, Chair. Present, good morning and welcome again to all present. My line of questioning to the committee, to those present, the East Port of Spain Development Company, in particular is really as it relates to project management, and if time permits, and of course subject to the Commissioner Chair, the Chairman, a few questions on the procurement process is currently, practiced within the company, right? Now, I want to applaud, firstly, Member Scotland for, dealing with the issue of how projects in particular, community outreach projects is what I would refer to it. Projects that, of course, seek to develop, especially and focus on the youths in the area. And let me also, based on the information that has been provided for the public record, applaud the East Port of Spain Development Company, at least based on the oral submissions that you made here today, relative to projects that you have already started to reach out to the community, because as I'm sure is the case with all of the members on this committee, critical is projects that has an impact and that can truly assist in the development of our people and in this particular area, in the East Port of Spain area. Now, coming out of what was made in the the oral submissions, I know Member Scotland would have asked the question about, in essence, he would have asked, what else or what might be your recommendation relative to support that you may require in order to assist you in being able to deliver your mandates. I know we heard from the ministry as per, areas that they may probably require bolstering. So the East Development Company, East Port of Spain Development Company, I too would want to hear from you all. When we look at the area of plant, machinery, people, processes, what areas or what recommendations can you make for our consideration that you may require in order to be able to bolster your processes and truly be able to allow you to be positioned to help the communities and to help the young people and the people generally in these communities? Because certainly I would want to hear, and I'm sure based on the recommendations you make, it would certainly be something that as a committee we can consider and then make a recommendation thereafter.
Who you would like to answer that question? Mrs. Sakram Singh?
Managing Director, Chair of the East Port of Spain Development Company.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Manager, please.
Sure, Chairman. Thank you. And thank you to the member for the questions as well. I'm going to try and figure out where to start because there were a number of issues raised. In terms of our recommendations, the PS would have outlined some. We have identified definitely the need for staffing. We have done a comprehensive review of the organizational structure of the company, appreciating the fact that the structure that we had at the startup of the company needs some tweaking as we move forward. And so we've looked at that. We have a number of gaps, especially in the professional and technical side of the company's operations and at the management level. So we need to fill those gaps. And the PS would have outlined some of the challenges in addressing that, one of which would be getting the approval for some positions, new positions, and also getting approval for revised terms and conditions of employment, because we have found that is a stumbling block for us as we try to recruit. The current compensation package is not attractive, it's not competitive, and that presents a challenge. And as you may appreciate, that there are certain challenges for some people working in communities like East Port of Spain where we have to be on the ground, and that's essential for our company. So we want to make sure that we engage people who are comfortable being out on the ground and can do that. So our human capital, our organization structure and staffing is an area that we need support with. And we have made recommendations. The PS has indicated that some of the recommendations are with the board and some with the ministry in terms of a revised organization structure and compensation package. So we are looking at that aspect of it. We also have some challenges with respect to rolling out our development programs, and part of that has to do with the funding mechanisms for development projects. And I will split that between our IDF Infrastructure Development Fund and the projects associated with that, plus and separate that from the socioeconomic program, the social and economic program for East Port of Spain, which is an area where a lot of the initiatives that you and Member Scotland are asking about fall, as we try to get the youth engaged in productive activities and so on. And so it's not just an issue of the absolute level of funding, it's an issue of the disbursement of funds and the time it takes to disburse funds, because it means our projects get delayed, and then the small contractors, who are most of the contractors that we hire, cannot carry the financial burden of the projects while waiting on funds to be disbursed. And so that impacts us as well. In terms of the social and economic program for East Port of Spain, that's an area where the funding is not necessarily adequate to meet the needs of the communities, and that funding has been reduced somewhat this financial year. So there we're looking at the kinds of human development programs, capacity building programs, skills training programs. All of those are things that we do in the communities to support the young people. And we do some of those initiatives on our own in terms of getting identifying the programs through our work with the communities and what they have identified, and bringing in the necessary facilitators to deliver on those programs. But we also seek to partner with other agencies of the state and other agencies as well in the private sector or the NGO sector to assist in delivering those programs. So, for instance, right now we are collaborating with the Adult Literacy Tutors Association to address problems of literacy in some of the schools, which really are affecting the youth, and to make sure that they have the best chance possible to succeed. So we're working with them on that. Other initiatives, like we have been assisting schools to make sure they have Wi-Fi, to make sure they have devices for children who need to be able to connect online. We are supporting those kinds of initiatives as well. And we look at activities like sport and culture as opportunities and tools for social and economic development, especially for young people. And so the refurbishment of recreation grounds and facilities where young people can engage in productive and constructive recreation activities, that's important. We've been asked about the impact that our programs have on young people as well. We support parents, especially in this COVID-related time, because we have homework programs that we can provide support, a place for students to be in our impact centers, obviously meeting all the COVID guidelines and so on, and to make sure that they have that academic support as needed. We have been able, through the COVID period as well, to make sure that we have transfer our programs to a virtual format. So while we may not be able to gather in person, it has not prevented us from reaching out and providing for the needs of the people, because we've been able to do it through virtual programming. So I hope that addresses some of your questions. If I have omitted anything, I'd be happy to.
Thank you most sincerely for that intervention. Now, let's turn to our small contractors or contractors that would usually, that the East Port of Spain Development Company would usually deal with, right? Now, if we turn, so for the benefit of the listening public, of course, you all would have submitted your written submissions. And on page 19 of that submission, in answer to question 5, when asked what are some of the challenges experienced while executing East Port of Spain Development Company procurement processes, one of the areas that you would have identified is the low level of technical skills among some contractors and workers, right? Now, what I want to know is, firstly, I want to ask, what are some of the common tender requirements which our small contractors from these areas that they usually fail to meet? That's the first question. And 2, because of the level of outreach that the East Port of Spain Development Company has already embarked upon, can you clearly just identify, once these shortcomings of our contractors are identified, what mechanisms are put into place to ensure that we now equip them? And I love what you said, because it's actually a part of my note. What technical skills have been put into place, or what systems have been put into place to ensure our small contractors now have a fighting chance to be able to qualify legally for these contracts, and of course be able to let the benefit of these contracts redound to the persons and residents of these areas.
Okay, so in terms of the tender requirements, what we have found over the years is many of the contractors are not familiar with the procurement process. They may not be able to submit a comprehensive tender with all the information that's required. They fall down sometimes with the compliance requirements, because they're required to have the BIR certification, VAT registration where appropriate, and all those other issues, financial statements from their financial institutions, etc. What we have found different ways of supporting them. So let me identify a few. Over the years, we have done 3 sets of contractor training programs where we collaborated at the time with NEDCO to deliver contractor, whether it's in procurement processes, HR management, different aspects of the submitting a proper tender, financial planning. We have introduced the contractors. So over the years, we've trained at least 75 contractors in those areas. Yes, and we are, in fact, right now working with a number of service providers to organize another such training program. So that's one way of ensuring the contractors have the required skills. We also have been running for the last few years a construction skills training program, where we look at the kinds of skills the contractors need their workers to be proficient in. So whether it's carpentry, masonry, plumbing, electrical work, heavy equipment operating, we have been running courses in that, facilitated by MIC and NESC, National Energy Skills Training Institute. So they provide the facilitation for those programs, and those are available to the workers and people within the communities.
Great. And you see, the reason why I asked that is because we understand the more technical a contract or scope of work becomes. And let's say someone cannot qualify, what you would find is that, of course, contracts go into particular persons, one particular company. And the purpose, to my mind, is that you want as many persons as possible from the community to, of course, be able to benefit from these contracts. And, of course, clearly providing them with the technical skills, one, to be able to firstly qualify for the contract, and then of course any further and additional support required in the execution of the contract certainly will benefit them, right?
And that's another area, if I can add, where it's critical for us to make sure that we plug those HR gaps within our organization at the professional and technical level, because we understand our role, developmental role, not just developing physical infrastructure, but human development as well. And so we need to be able to support those contractors as they carry out the work, to help them with some of the organization and technical areas where they may not be proficient, so that they can execute the programs. So it is critical for us that we have that technical support on staff to be able to provide support to contractors as well.
Thank you for that. Now, if I may turn to page 16 of your submissions, right? And this is in response to question 11. Now, a question was asked, since we're on the point of the contracts, how frequent were project evaluations conducted by the company, and what were the lessons learned? And it was stated from that particular, in response to that question, of course, you would have listed what was learned, the need to improve contract documents, to improve clarity and conditions, and a whole list was given in your written submissions. Now, with respect, and I'm not sure if you would be positioned to answer this, or probably you're legal, right? But with respect to the contract documents, given its current form, what exactly in these contract documents you all believe that still requires the improvement alluded to in that particular page 16 of your submissions?
We made some changes to the contract document to make sure that some of the requirements are clearer, right, to make sure that we have updated our health and safety policies with respect to what we expect of contractors in the field, what are the requirements for submission, documents that they require to submit, to be submitted with their tender, and so on. So those are some of the things that we've just made some changes to make it more comprehensive, more relevant to the needs. We also have to be able to simplify some of our contract documents, because we have different levels of projects. So the more complicated, comprehensive type development projects require a certain level of detail in the contract document that may not be required for some of the smaller projects that we do. So we're trying to tailor the contract document to the level and scale of the projects that we do as well.
Sorry, so go ahead.
Yeah, I would also open the floor to, in case our legal officer wants to add anything, or a project consultant, in terms of the work that was done on those documents.
Thank you, MD, and through you, Chair, I would just add that we would have recently engaged an exercise where, in collaboration with the procurement, the Office of Procurement Regulator, we would have provided a precedent of our contract documents for them to review and give us any feedback on ways in which we can improve. I know they did highlight that they felt it was the standard form that we were using and that we can possibly, the way in which we set out the evaluation criteria, that we can make some amendments in that area. And the procurement officer is currently reviewing that particular aspect of the contract. But for the most part, they did indicate that it was a regular contract form and they were satisfied with it.
Thanks for that intervention, Ms. Charles. Now, this is just my personal opinion, right? And I think as a lawyer, I'm also a lawyer I'm an attorney at law. And I know in the past, sometimes of course, based on the changing of laws and all of that, we are required, of course, and more so you are required to look at your contracts, review your contracts, the terms of your contracts, all of that. But sometimes in being able, in doing so, the flip side or the negative side of that is that you may have smaller contractors believing that what it does is simply complicates the process and it makes it even more difficult for them to now be able to qualify for these contracts. And more so sitting in the ministry that I sit in now, you understand when people, for example, do a company, they come to register a company, they hold their head and their ball because, especially if you're looking at a small contractor who never did this before, now understanding with all these regulations and the changes, the procurement regulations, the procurement legislation, everything that is now happening, you find that small contractors may now feel disenchanted in the whole process, right? Respectfully, I think what is necessary as well is for our smaller contractors as a part of the education and outreach process is to also remind them that we are bolstering and changing the look and increasing certain requirements in the contracts, not to make it difficult for you, but to simply be able to allow you to truly be able to develop your company and also take your company to a different level. And why I'm saying this is because I personally have seen, and I'm sure you would have seen in your experience, that we in the thrust to improve systems, we have the small man feeling as if, well, I could never qualify for that contract again, or because my company is not registered, or I don't have all the paperwork in place. And I think it's always critical for, especially as it relates to small and medium contractors, to let them know that these systems are not being put into place as a punitive measure or to prevent you from having access to the contracts, but is really with respect to allowing and assisting you in, of course, developing the manner in which you conduct your business. To that end, of course, that's where I have to again applaud the East Port of Spain Development Company for the community outreach and the way in which you go out there and, of course, assist the contractors, the small contractors, with the assistance, of course, that they would require in allowing them, of course, to qualify for these contracts and more so understand the importance of, putting their house in order, for want of a better word. Now, what I want to know, Chair, do I still have some time to continue, or?
If you could just pause for a moment so I could go to Amrita and then Mrs. Lizama, and we can come back to you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Miss Amrita, do you know right?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning again to all members before us. I honestly believe that the work that you all are doing are beneficial to the vulnerable population in East Port of Spain, and I therefore applaud you all for your hard work. But as a follow-up to one of the questions that were asked by Member Scotland and then asked again by the Chair, I still find that I haven't received a clear answer as to what is the impact that you all have by conducting these very, very important projects to the population of East Port of Spain. And so I would like to ask the question in a different way. Now, I'm looking at your written submissions and I am seeing that you had a strategic plan that was recently concluded for the period of 2017 to 2020. And the first thing I want to ask is then, which of these objectives were fully achieved, or to what extent these objectives were fully achieved? And for the listening public, let me just state what these objectives were. The strategic objectives were 1, sustainable development, 2, safety and security, 3, economic development, 4, environmental sustainability, and 5, operational efficiency. So my question is, with respect to these strategic objectives, to what extent these objectives were fully achieved for the period 2017 to 2020?
Yes, so thanks for the question. Some of those issues are being addressed as we do the rollout of new strategic plan. Certainly one of the things that we found is that we needed to be more specific in terms of our measurement, how we would measure success in these areas. But let me just say that in terms of sustainable development, one of our contributions to achieving that objective is to making sure that we have in place or have prepared a sustainable development strategy for East Port of Spain, that the work that we do contributes to improving the quality of life of residents. And we measure that in terms of providing services and facilities that people did not have before, or improving on infrastructure in areas where infrastructure was deficient or needed to be addressed. So while we may not have a numeric measurement for it, we can certainly point to the ways in which we have improved the quality of life of the residents, the ways in which we have increased sustainability. We have aligned some of our projects to the sustainable development goals. Particularly, let's look at our latrine eradication program, which is aligned to SDG 6 in terms of water and sanitation and providing facilities that improve the dignity and quality of human life of residents. That's one of the projects that also contributes to safety, because the data shows us that a number of women and girls are subject to sexual and physical assaults while using public external latrines at night. So by putting in the toilet facilities closer to their homes or integrated into their homes, we are contributing to safety and security there. Our projects are also designed in that way in terms of the use of recreation facilities. We make sure that they're adequately lit. We provide safe and access routes for persons using, getting through East Port of Spain and using the facilities that we have. In terms of economic development, the fact that we engage contractors from East Port of Spain and they in turn engage labor from within the communities, it is boosting economic development. Our programs, that our women's entrepreneurial development programs, our youth entrepreneurship programs, all those programs that develop those skills in entrepreneurship and create opportunities for the residents of East Port of Spain to earn an income through the use of the skills with the work of the company or elsewhere, then that's another way in which we are contributing to economic development in the area. Environmental sustainability through our LEP program, also looking at ways of building resilience with respect to areas prone to natural disasters, in particular flooding. So we've looked at our drainage programs. We have a sustainable water management program that makes sure that households are able to channel water into storage tanks and then to be able to direct that away from the property, something that was contributing to a lot of erosion around homes and on the difficult terrain in East Port of Spain. So there are a number of initiatives that we have used, and we think that there are ways in which we have contributed to achieving those strategic objectives. And of course, internally, while we are still trying to achieve our human resource adequacy, that there are a number of things that we have done to improve efficiency within the company. And I've spoken about the policies and procedures, operating procedures and manuals, aligning our procurement policies with the OPR. And we are trying to do a lot more work in terms of building a monitoring and evaluation capability for the projects for our own internal activities.
Thank you so much for your response. So then, therefore, because this is beautiful work that you all are doing, right? And it may very well be having a tremendous impact on the East Port of Spain population. But what I'm hearing from you is that there isn't any intention to quantify what you all are doing. Is that it?
No.
And I ask that because I'm looking at your strategic objective of economic development. And I see that you say here as one of the sub-indicators or the performance measure is 15% reduction in poverty per year, right? if you are quantifying your performance measure, then your outcome indicators need to also be quantified. So how come we don't have a quantification to these indicators?
Okay, so I'm not saying that we don't intend to quantify. In fact, once the new strategic plan is approved, we would see that the gaps are made up there. So the new strategic plan focuses on using a balanced scorecard methodology. And so that will be much more targeted in terms of measuring performance and developing the performance indicators and measures. So that was one of the deficiencies in the strategic plan up to the 2020 period, but it is something that's being addressed in the new strategic plan.
Okay, I think this is very important because if it is you are targeting 15% reduction in poverty per year for the period between 2017 to 2020, you should have cumulatively achieved 60% reduction in poverty in that area, right? Now, I hear that you are going to eventually quantify these indicators, your work to get measurable outcomes going forward. But I also saw in your written response, you indicated that no formal project evaluations are currently done. Even though you all pay attention to the key lessons learned from each project that you all implement and complete, there's no formal project evaluation that is done. Could you tell me why?
Sure. So let me say that's one of the lessons learned, that we have realized that the language used in responding to that question was a little bit misleading. And so we take responsibility for that. We do conduct evaluations. So we do look at our projects to ensure that to determine whether they are completed within time and within budget. And we do look at quality and so on. We evaluate the work of our contractors. We do have a formal contractor evaluation format that we use. What the point that should have been made there, it is not documented necessarily in a particular way, but that is something that we're working on to achieve because we're in the midst of finalizing an operations procedures manual that will document formally those project evaluations. So we do look at time and budget. We do look at quality issues. We look at the performance of contractors. We look to make sure that it's something that we are working on to reintroduce, but we actually did surveys within the community to ensure community satisfaction with the projects that were delivered. So it was a bit of an error on our part in terms of the way the wording used to respond to that question, but we are evaluating the projects that we undertake. And yes, I can also invite one of the members of the team to expand further on that if necessary.
Yeah, because what the project evaluation should include also is the impact on the beneficiaries. And if you say you are conducting evaluations of the projects, then you would also be conducting an evaluation of the impact of the project, not necessarily only time, scope, and the time and scope in terms and the performance of the contractors, but also the impact of the deliverables of the project on the population. So that I believe that you have scope for making that project evaluation a little more comprehensive so that you have indicators that will be measurable and also targeted.
Yeah.
Let me move on to let me continue on the strategic plan. Now, I saw that a consultant was hired to conduct the 2021 to 2023 strategic plan. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And when are we scheduled for that strategic plan to be completed?
The document is finished. As the PS indicated, it is currently with the board for approval.
Okay, I also saw that you mentioned that the cost of the strategic plan was $192,900. Is that the standard fee that you will pay for strategic plan? Is it significantly more than the previous one? And could you give us a breakdown as to how this $192,900 is distributed in terms of deliverables for the strategic plan?
Right. So I will ask the finance manager to address the details of that question. But just to say, this is the first time we have engaged an external consultant to assist with that. Previously, it was done internally. And the exercise that we did was not just for the preparation of the strategic plan. As part of that, we were doing a comprehensive reevaluation of our organization structure and staffing requirements. So all of that would have been included in the cost. It was not just the strategic plan and the balance scorecard methodology. But Nissa, if you are able to provide some additional details on the breakdown of the cost.
You will have to give me a few minutes to find the invoice so I can give you a breakdown. I don't have it on me.
Or we can submit it subsequently.
Yes,
Right.
you can submit it in writing, please.
Okay.
So in your written submission, let me continue to you all provided us with a SWOT matrix that highlighted your strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities. So just one thing I want to point out in the area of weakness. I saw that the one weakness identified is that the ability to attract international development agencies to fund development programs and projects. Could you elaborate on that weakness, please?
The ability to attract as a weakness, sorry?
Yes, as a weakness on page 4 of your submission, number 7.
Yeah, I think what was meant there, we do have interest from international development agencies. I think one of the challenges for us is that EPOS as an entity cannot engage directly with them. We have to do it with the approval of the Ministry of Finance, if I'm not mistaken. And so we've had approaches through the Caribbean Development Bank, through some of the UN agencies to do work with us, and we have worked with the IDB. That was one successful initiative. But I think what we're referring to there is the fact that it's something that requires the approval of central government to facilitate some of those initiatives.
Okay, so through your interaction and assistance from international agencies, was it at any point assisting with the disbursements or the funding issues that you all experience?
No. So, for instance, with the IDB, they worked with us specifically on a project to produce designs for the restoration of Fort Picton. They were also involved in other work that we were doing, and they would have collaborated with the ETH University in Switzerland, and I don't remember the other school out of the US, to come in and look at some of the community engagement initiatives, some of the urban regeneration initiatives that we had done, and to participate in generating other ideas and solutions for some of those challenges, but not in terms of disbursement of funds. They would have funded the specific initiative that they were involved in.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now, let me move, before I pause for Member Lizama Leasing, I want to move to page 22 of your submission, which speaks to your the strength of your risk management initiatives. And I see that first you indicated that, you would rate from between 1 to 5, with 1 being poor and 5 being excellent. You would rate your overall strength of your risk management initiatives as 5. But then when we ask you about your integration of risk management into the company's planning and decision-making process, you rate that as 2, which is poor. Could you elaborate on this, please?
So 2 is fair. And I think what we're looking at is because we have now rolled out our internal audit process, the risk assessment has been done by the internal auditor. So we're clear on what the level of risks are. What we are working towards is to making sure that we are now integrating those more fully into the work of the company. So the recommendations of the auditors are being implemented, and we have seen that through some of the policies and so on that have been introduced, policies and internal control measures that have been introduced. So I think for us, one of the challenges was the fact that we were looking at 2012, 2013 financial statements, and we were required to state what was the position at that time, and then mindful of the fact that certain other activities have taken place in the intervening period. So we're straddling both. Yes. So that would be my response. That integration is an ongoing process, and as we develop the policies and the internal controls, we are in that process now of integrating that into our operations in a much stronger way.
Okay, and do you have a timeline to fully capture all of these?
It's an ongoing process. We've completed internal audit reviews of the operations of many of the operations of the company, and we've just started another audit work plan period that covers 2021 to 2023. And so we are starting to roll out that and audit other aspects of the company's operations, which would lead to recommendations for improvement that would then be implemented. But those recommendations are monitored by the internal auditor in terms of an audit tracking mechanism, and they report quarterly on our progress with respect to implementation of those recommendations.
Any one of these recommendations to hire an in-house internal auditor? Because I saw that, correct me if I'm wrong, I saw that right now it is outsourced.
Yes. So that was a recommendation that we would have had made to the company back in 2019. And we have sought to implement that. That's one of the matters that's before the HRAC, because it was not a position that was on the original in organization structure. And therefore, we would have to have the approval of the HRAC to introduce that position and to agree terms and conditions. And so job description would have been sent and proposed terms and conditions would also have been submitted.
Okay, how long were these submitted and in whose hands are these with? Is it Ministry of Finance?
These are with the HRAC since 2018, October 2018.
Okay, so how soon should we expect a response to this? Because 2018 to now.
To the Ministry of Finance on that matter, because
okay, so the Ministry of Finance, could you assist us, please?
Ministry of Finance.
Yes.
Yes, the Ministry of Finance, yes. Yes.
Yes, through you, Chair, the proposal that they refer to with the Human Resource Advisory Committee, which is separate from the Ministry of Finance. It's a ministerial committee. So we will not be able to give any timeline on when feedback will be given on this.
Okay, so could I ask the question then? Who could ask for an update? Who could at least request an update? Is it East Port of Spain? Is it the Ministry of Housing? Or is it the Ministry of Finance? Because this is with the HRAC since 2018. So we should at least be in a position to ask for an update as to where the decision is on this.
Okay. So the mechanism that the Human Resource Advisory Committee have in place is that all the proposal has to come from the entity through the line ministry. So the line ministry should also be the one to follow through on this matter.
Okay. So if a PS in the Ministry of Housing, through you, Chair, could you assist us in answering this question, please?
Yes, we would have sought an update and we're told that it's still under consideration. We will seek further update on that matter and we could always provide that in writing at a later time.
Okay, thank you. Chair, I would pause now.
Yeah, before I ask Member Lizama to come in, Madam Permanent Secretary, Housing and Development, as well as the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance Investment Division. Can you indicate to this committee what is the mandate, as far as you are aware, of the HRI? Is it the Human Resource Advisory Committee? What is the mandate of this committee? What I am a bit not too clear as to the role of that committee. The decision to establish an internal audit function. I'm not too clear. So could someone clarify for me what is this HRAC about? What is its mandate? And if both the Ministry of Finance Investments Division as well as the Ministry of Housing could clarify for this committee.
Thank you, Chair. While I cannot speak directly on behalf of that committee, I would say that the committee is responsible for assessing and making recommendations on increase in staffing and organizational structure for government agencies. The recommendations from that committee is what will be appended to the relevant cabinet notes in order to give credit to the request from the ministry for the increase in staff that is being requested.
Can I ask the head of the Ministry of Finance Investments Division to comment on this?
Okay. So, through you, Chair, the government established the ministerial committee, and the role of the committee is the revision of pay and other terms and conditions of employment of employees of state enterprises, including managerial staff and persons employed on contract. They fall under the purview of the ministerial committee. So, proposals for negotiations and salary increases, they are to be approved by this committee.
But the question here is not increased in the terms and conditions of employment of the staff of the East Port Spain Development Company. It is the establishment of an internal audit function, which is demanded of them under the State Enterprise Performance Manual document. So how can a state company function without an internal audit function? And we are being told that it is dependent upon the approval of a ministerial committee that deals with terms and conditions of employment of staff within the particular entity. I think conceptually, we are confusing both issues here. So we need some clarification from the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. Because from where I sit as chairman, it is very clear to me that an internal audit function is mandated under the State Enterprise Performance Manual document. And I can't see how any committee could be preventing that from occurring within a state entity. So I think that we need to get some decision from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development in addressing this matter, working in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance. And I think that our committee will be writing to the Ministry of Housing, as well as the Ministry of Finance Investments Division, to have an internal audit function established forthwith within the East Port Spain Development Company. It is clear to us that that is a duty and function of the agency in question to have established so that there can be the relevant checks, controls available to that organization. So I believe that we'll have to take action to have this matter addressed. In doing so, may I ask the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development and the Ministry of Finance, what is the cost to the taxpayers on an annual basis to PricewaterhouseCoopers in outsourcing this internal function? can the managing director of the Port of Spain or the East Port of Spain Development Company and the Ministry of Housing guide us on this matter, please?
If I may, Chairman, can I ask our Manager, Finance and Admin to give you that figure?
Yes, we'd like to have that now.
Again, I'll have to double check the invoice, but I think it's an estimate of approximately $250,000.
And that has been going on how long, ma'am?
They did an audit in 2019-20, and they have to start another one this year.
And so in 2019 it was $220,000, right?
So it's for 19 and 20. So it was a 1-year contract, but it spanned 2 years. So that's $250 for 19 and 20.
So it's $250,000 for both 2019 and 2020 audit?
That's correct.
Do you have a contract to that effect?
Yes, we do.
Can you make that available to our committee?
Yes, I will.
All right. The other point I want to raise before I ask my friend to come in, that is Mrs. Lizama Leasing. I would like to ask the managing director of the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited. You talked about a strategic plan being developed for a 3-year period. Is it 2020 to 2023 or 2021 to 2023? Is it a 3-year strategic plan, or is it a 5-year strategic plan?
It's 3 years. It will cover the period 2021 to 2023.
Right. Now remember, we are in 2022.
Yes, we are.
Right, cool. Now, could you tell us the name of this consultant that was contracted? And first of all, the name of this consultant, and how was this consultant selected by the company? Was it by a sole select tendering process, or was it on a competitive tendering process? Could you clarify for this committee?
The company's Definitive Management Solutions, and it was a sole select arrangement.
And who are the players in this company that you mentioned?
The person that we've been dealing with is Antonia Ferrier.
Antonia. And how long this company has been in existence?
That's something I don't recall off the top of my head when the company started.
So
I can provide that information.
Yeah, could you explain to this company, to this committee rather, I beg your pardon, on what basis did the company sole select as opposed to going out for public tendering for a matter of a strategic plan, given the fact that there are many persons, organizations that can probably produce a plan maybe for 5 years and maybe for less? We don't know because we never attempted. What was the rationale that the company would have used to sole select this consultancy to do a 3-year plan as opposed to a 5-year plan?
We would have become aware of the work that the company did, and in particular in relation to use of the balanced scorecard methodology. That was something that we wanted to explore in this instance. And having become aware of that work and see, just having a proposal, ask for a proposal to be presented to us in terms of how it would be handled, we made the decision to go with that company. It was never a 5-year option because we had a plan that went up to from 2017 to 2020, and we needed to prepare for the next strategic plan period, which is a 3-year period. But we had some delays with the COVID situation, so we were not able to get the document done in 2020, but a draft was produced in 2021 to cover the next period.
But the plan for 2017 to 2019, 2020 was done by the same company?
No, it was done internally. This is the first time we are outsourcing the preparation of a strategic plan for the company.
So it was done internally in 2017, 2019, 2020, but for 2020 to 2023, 2021 rather, to 2023, the company decided to engage this organization that you mentioned on a sole select basis. May I ask the Ministry of Housing, the Permanent Secretary, as well as the Ministry of Finance and Investments Division, as the oversight body, were you aware of this development, and what is the normal practice in these matters that you would advise that company that's under your control or you are responsible for in the context of line ministry? Is this a good practice to go sole select as opposed to competitive bidding as it relates to value for money? Permanent Secretary first, and then we'll ask the Ministry of Finance.
Thank you, Chair. Chairman, it is always known to be best practice for us to do a tendering process, but the East Port of Spain would have engaged their process based on their needs and their particular assessment. The ministry did not get involved in terms of their activities in that regard until after the process was completed.
And the Ministry of Finance?
Chairman, we had some technical difficulty here, so could you repeat the question?
No, I'm just trying to clarify in terms of the best practice when it comes to the tendering of, let's say, projects, programs. In this instance, we have a strategic plan being tendered for just under $200,000. And then we just wanted to find out what was the role of the ministry in this whole exercise and what advice and guidelines would the ministry offer to both the East Port of Spain Development Company and the Ministry of Housing as it relates to best practice? Because this one has been done or was done on a sole select basis. Could you guide us on this? I'm talking to the Ministry of Finance Investments Division.
And it does provide guidance.
You have, the Ministry of Finance seems to be having some technical problems. All right, we'll come back to the Ministry of Finance. May I ask and invite Mrs. Laura Lizama to intervene at this time?
Thanks very kindly, Chairman. Good morning again to all of the members. I'm particularly delighted to have heard the very, very strong introduction by the Managing Director of East Port of Spain, Dr. Thomas Austin. And I think it is critical that that information that you use in your introduction should be widely circulated for the wider population to have a better understanding of the role and function of the East Port of Spain Development Company. I would like to compliment the organization in the first instance for the work that it has been doing over the years. And I do recognize, based on these documents that you have submitted, that there are in fact a few weaknesses that you would need strengthened as you continue in the pursuit of your mandate. Firstly, please, I know Senator Dunarang and Senate members Dunarang and Chairman Mark would have spoken to the strategic plan. So I'm not going to ask too much more, anything else on that matter, except to say that I look forward to the approval of your strategic plan for the upcoming period. And I look forward to getting information as to the achievements of your objectives set out in that strategic plan. I think we all agree that East Port of Spain Development Company is critical to the constituency. I don't mean the EBC's constituency, I mean the constituents that you serve and to all of your stakeholders. Can I ask you in the first instance, please, Madam Managing Director, you've spoken about a number of your different interventions and your different community projects, etc. Can I ask you, beyond the successes, what is the follow-up plan when you've done these socioeconomic interventions, particularly with individuals or groups within your community? Thank you.
I think for us, one of the things that we see the need to do and that we would like to be able to have the resources to be able to do, and that's the human resources, is in terms of the longitudinal studies that we want to be able to follow some of the participants of our program for a period of time to see how the participation in the program has benefited them in the longer term. Initially, we do get feedback from some of the participants that's coming, how the program has impacted them, how it has helped them find work, what are the benefits, the impacts it has had. So we are recording some of those, but we would like to develop that further, as I said, in terms of a longitudinal study to follow them over a longer period of time.
Okay, all right. So basically, you don't have too much information on that at this point in time.
Total information, as I said, we would have compiled from participants of the programs, yes.
Well, I would love to see that, because then you can develop that into a best practice as well, and then it can be a pilot project for other things throughout Trinidad and Tobago in a wider instance. And you talk about the human resources. That stood out to me very strongly. You've talked about the need to plug gaps in the HR structure. Member Mark asked about the internal audits and the necessary things that are needed for that HR situation. But would you say that that is the absolute weakness of the organization at this point in time? That the lack of people, the right people, or the lack of actually having the team members to take part in that process or to fill the gaps?
It is one of the major challenges that we have at this time, because we simply are under-resourced. And as I said, that is evident in the technical and professional areas. And so to be able to do some of the things that we would like to do, we simply don't have the resources in-house to do that. And for the resources that we have, given the work that we are required to do, the resources are stretched. Resources are stretched with its attendant challenges in terms of morale and burnout and that kind of thing. So it is a challenge that we face.
Okay. Well, I trust that all the relevant stakeholders who are present in this meeting are taking note of this and will push forward. I'm sure the committee as well will send in writing its request for support for that matter. I have one other question, please. I want to refer to a document that will be comments from the Ministry of Housing regarding the fraud policy and the whistleblowing policy. That was one of the submissions that we would have received. Now, it's dated November 2019, and we are now just in March of 2022. Can I ask, has there been any action to correct or amend or treat with the areas of concern that had been highlighted by the ministry on that policy?
Yes, we would have received those comments and we would have amended the policy to suit, and the policy would have then been approved by the board, but reflecting the changes recommended by the ministries.
Okay, well, good. I'm very happy to hear that. And can I ask, has the policy ever been effected? Meaning, has anyone come forward?
Not since that policy has been rolled out to staff, so staff is aware of the policy and what they can do under the policy. It has not been, as you say, rolled out in that respect as yet. It's not been effected in that way.
Okay, well, that's a good thing, I would say. That should be a good thing. Again, I just want to wrap up by complimenting the East Port of Spain Development Company. I know your work is critical, and I do hope that the necessary support is continued to be given to the organization so that it can fulfill its role in repairing, fixing, strengthening, improving the socioeconomic conditions of all of the stakeholders, users, residents, participants in that area. Thank you very much. Chairman, that's it for my first round of line of questioning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mrs. Amalie Singh. Before I ask my colleague, Mr. Scotland, to come back into the exercise, I would like to ask a few areas, or ask a few questions rather, for clarification. Now, Madam Managing Director, I'm going to take you to page 40 of your submission. And I want to refer specifically to government grants in the context of what you have submitted. Now, as you know, government grants are obviously funded by the taxpayers of this country, and therefore we, at the level of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, would want to ensure, in accordance with our mandate, that there is value for money. Now, I realize that in 2012, according to the information on page 40, your recurrent expenditure was just about $6.9 million. That was reduced to 5.1 million in 2013. And as it relates to your capital or development expenditure, it was $250,000 in 2012, and that was reduced to some $223,000 in 2013. However, when we look at the breakdown of the grants, in addition to the expenditure, recurrent and capital, we noticed that in 2012, there was a grand total as it relates to government grants of some $16.3 million. So whilst the company was allocated in 2012 $7 million, when we look at the government grants, you had something like about $16 million in expenditure during that period, resulting in a loss of some almost about 5.7 million or thereabouts. And then when we go to 2013, it went up, expenditure that is, to 23 million with a loss of $11.8 million. What I'm trying to clarify here is, could you explain to our committee what has been the trend for the period beyond that as it relates to government grants, 2014 and beyond, if you can provide us with those figures. And when it comes to expenditure on the projects, capital projects, we had 8.6 million in 2012 and some 16 million in 2013. Madam Managing Director, could you provide this committee with a detailed breakdown of the actual projects in 2012 amounting to 8.6 million, 2013, 16.5 million. And for purposes of clarification, could you explain to this committee or provide to this committee under the grants that would have been given to this company by the government, what would be your projects in a detailed way for 14 to 21? We'd like to have some clarification. Would you be in a position to provide us with a summary?
Yes, Chairman, thank you for the question. And we have to say there was an error. The tables provided on page 40 inaccurate, should not be there. That was an error that we noted, and I would invite the Manager Finance and Admin to explain. And this has been pointed out to both the Ministry of Housing and the Ministry of Finance. And MFA, would you like to provide the further clarification, please?
Sure, that's not a problem. So the government grant received in 2012 and 2013, as the chairman pointed out, was the money we received for recurrent funding for those years. And that, as the MD just mentioned, the tables here was incorrect. We put it in the document, but if I refer to our financial statements and we go to page 5 of the financial statement for 2013, and I don't know if you all have that on hand, you would see a breakdown of the expenditure for those financial years. So we had administrative expenditure for 2012 as 846,000, that's what we have here, sorry. And for 2013, 561,000. So as I was saying before, this figure here is incorrect. And the list of projects that was done for those financial years as well is also listed in the financial statement on page 20. You will see the entire list of the projects for each financial year.
So are you saying to this committee that, well, not you per se, ma'am, but the managing director? I'm directing this question to. This is the second occasion that you have advised this committee that there are inaccuracies in this document that we are examining, and we would have assumed that what we have before us would have been properly vetted by the company before these submissions would have been made to the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, because our committee is a subcommittee of the Parliament, and we are dealing with public expenditure. So I would like to ask the managing director, do you think that we, upon a closer examination of this document, we may crop up with further inaccuracies? Or would you say this could probably be the final one? Or do you anticipate further inaccuracies in the statements submitted by the company? Managing Director?
Yes, Chairman. We do not anticipate further inaccuracies. We took time and effort. This was done at a difficult time in 2021 when government offices were closed due to the COVID situation. And so we had our own challenges in putting together the information and having staff come into the office even at that time to meet the deadlines of the committee. This was an oversight, and the document having been looked at again, we didn't pick this up. But the information, as the MFA indicated, the accurate information is in the audited financial statements, which are in fact before the committee. So the information really hasn't changed. That information is in the document. And so it was just an oversight that these two tables were put in there. It's inaccurate, and we acknowledge that.
And I asked earlier, when it comes to 2012 on page 40, which is the document I'm looking at, can you clarify whether the project expenditure, capital project expenditure for 2012 amounted to $8.563 million, and 2013, item 8, $16,455,825. Are these two figures accurate or are they inaccurate?
I would have to do a total of it, but in terms of capital expenditure, because a section of the financial statements is actually dealing with government grants. And so the government grant is for recurrent expenses. our project expenses are funded separately and calculated separately. So capital expenditure here would have been for the assets of the company in terms of any vehicles, computers, that kind of assets. So we do have at appendices 5 and 6 of our submission a detailed list of the projects implemented in 2012, 2013. And I think Appendix 6 goes beyond that. And as the MFA indicated on page 20 of the audited financial statements, there's an accurate breakdown of the projects implemented and the costs of those projects.
Could you provide, yes, Madam Managing Director, could you provide to this committee a detailed breakdown of all the projects that would have been undertaken by the East Port of Spain Development Company for the period 2012-2013 to start with? And if you can update us with what were the actual projects and their expenditures for the period beyond, given the fact that you had provided us with some earlier information leading up to 2021, would you be in a position to provide us in writing with, for instance, those projections in terms of, not projection, the actual expenditure in terms of projects for the period 2012 to the end of 2021 in writing?
Sorry, Chairman. The information for 2012 and 2013 is included at Appendix 5, and information for 2014 to 2020 is included at Appendix 6. So yes, we can provide information from 2020 to the end of 2021. We can provide that to the committee in writing.
And then the final thing I'd like to raise before I ask my colleague to come in is the actual status of your workforce. Your workforce total is about 39 to 40 members of staff?
Actual workforce is 23 persons.
And could you give us a breakdown? Could you give us a breakdown in terms of how many are permanent and how many are on contract, or are they all on contract?
They're all on contract.
And what is the ideal level of staffing you would require to execute your mandate, given your responsibilities for this company?
Our organizational structure is around 42 to 44 persons. That's what we would require to be fully operational.
And right now you just talked about 21?
23.
23. Now, Mr. Scotland had asked very early in his presentation, how many young people or citizens within your catchment area that you mentioned earlier on rather, of some 76,000 persons, how many would have benefited directly from your initiatives to bring about an improvement in their quality of life, their standard of living, given the training that you would have embarked upon? How many were able to graduate, to get certified? And do you keep a track of these persons as it relates to gainful employment opportunities, given their training, their certification, and their ability to have gainful employment? Is there any mechanism, any documentation that can guide us as to the efficacy of your various initiatives on the advancement of these individuals' quality of life and standard of living? Is there any mechanism available that we can be apprised of?
So currently what we can provide would be the programs, information on the programs that we have undertaken, and the persons who have completed those programs. We can certainly compile that information. I indicated earlier in response to another question that if we had the adequate staffing, we would certainly be looking towards doing longitudinal studies so that we can track these participants over a period of time. That is something we have not yet been able to do, but we certainly can compile information on the persons who have participated, benefited from programs. Some of the programs are certification programs, like the construction skills training program, that's an official certified, but others are certificates of participation that would have been issued by the facilitators. So that's information that we can compile.
I'll ask Mr. Scotland to come in at this time to further his areas of interest concerning this company.
Chairman, would you just give me exactly 1 minute and I'll be in. Exactly 1 minute. I'm coming now, Chair.
Yes. Whilst I'm giving you 1 minute, may I ask Mrs. Dionarine to just come in briefly and you will be referred to thereafter. Mrs. Amrita Dionarine, I know you wanted to clarify a matter. Can you do it? And Mr. Scotland would follow immediately after.
Okay, Chair, the matter that I would want to clarify would take more than 1 minute. However, there's another issue that I could speak of in the interim, following up from your question that you just asked. I want to ask the East Port of Spain Chair, if it is, they referred to the census in 2010 being their baseline in which they are using, right, for the East Port of Spain area. Could you tell us what is the rate of unemployment and poverty for the East Port of Spain division that you are using to base your strategic plan on?
If I'm not mistaken, the 2010-2011 census would not have recorded certain employment information that would have allowed us to update unemployment figures. So no, we do not have that as an up-to-date figure. The census, you would recognize that we rely on the census because that's the only official data, or the Central Statistical Office would be the only agency that is legitimately allowed to go out there and capture household data for Trinidad and Tobago. So we have to rely on the census data, and yes, we recognize it is 10 years old at this time. When we started our work, we were using data from the 2000 census, and we were able to update that to 2010-2011. Until the next census is done, we don't have any more up-to-date information. Information on unemployment is not at the census level in terms of a house-to-house reporting. It will be sample data, if I'm not mistaken. And so
yes, based on the CSSP, and that would be available from the 2015 CSSP. So do you have a figure that you are working with?
No, we do not from the CSSP, because the CSSP sample points were not in East Port of Spain. As far as we do. And that's the information I have.
Okay, so going forward, sorry to interrupt because I know I have 1 minute. Going forward in terms of the new strategic plan that you all are working on, is there an intention to collaborate with the CSO and the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, especially given that you all have a chronic staffing problem, to help complement you all in establishing or realizing the targets that you all are trying to meet?
Yes, so the Ministry of Social Development would be a new area of collaboration in respect of that information, but we do work very closely with the CSO, and from the time the census data is available, we are one of the agencies that is pushing them to get that data, because we have to get it at a very granular level in order to do the assessments for our area. So we do work very closely and have the support of the CSO in providing information as it becomes available through the census.
Yeah, and I believe this will be especially important, especially when you will start to do more work on the East Port of Spain revitalization program, because you will need the data at that granular level. Okay, so let me pause for Member Scotland. Thank you.
Chairman, Member Durine, I'm very grateful. East Port of Spain Development Company this committee sees you through the chair as a very significant tool in the development of East Port of Spain. Chairman, I think that we will all agree that there are challenges, there are communities that are challenged in East Port of Spain. I've looked at the 5 objectives that were outlined in your strategic plan 2017-2020. Chairman, for the listening public who did not hear them, would you allow me just to list them before I ask my question, please?
Yes.
They were in this order: sustainable development, safety and security, economic development, environmental sustainability, and operational efficiency. I would like you to get granular for me and for the committee, this Joint Select Committee. How does the organization plan to implement these 5 strategic objectives within a short space of time? How are you going to translate those 5 objectives into achievable goals?
I would have gone through each of those strategic objectives earlier, and perhaps we can do that again. Looking at sustainable development, there are different ways in which the company is working towards that objective in terms of the physical infrastructure improvements that we do within East Port of Spain, the various activities in terms of drainage projects, road projects, upgrading recreation grounds, our latrine eradication program. Those are projects that...
I don't mean to cut you, okay. Safety and security.
Right, so in terms of safety and security, as articulated in our draft development plan for East Port of Spain, we are focusing on the concept of crime prevention through environmental design. And that is a concept that looks at the way the environment is designed and laid out that can create opportunities for crime. So our safety and security initiatives are not meant to replace policing initiatives, but are meant to look at how through design and layout we can reduce opportunities for crime. And so we employ some of the CPTED principles in the work that we do.
Would you be liaising with members in the community and with the police service to try to implement that strategic objective?
Well, it's something that we already do. And so safety and security, as I said, it's looking at the broader concept of safety and security. This is not about policing. The police take care of that. There's a community policing initiative that meshes with what we do. We have been involved with Hearts and Minds, with the interagency task force in terms of various initiatives to engage the young people in the area to promote safety and security on project sites. But as I said, a lot of it focuses on the design and layout of the environment. So for instance, facilities like our recreation grounds, ensuring that they're lit is one of the ways of it, because one of the principles of crime prevention through environmental design is natural surveillance. So making sure that you bring eyes and you bring light and visibility to areas that hopefully would reduce opportunities for crime. So that's another way in which we do it. We do liaise closely with the populations and with the existing security services.
Chairman, through you, when you speak, would you like a drink of water, madam? You are muted.
Sorry, I'm okay. Thank you.
Economic development. How is this plan of economic development to be filtered down into the communities, the challenged communities in East Port of Spain?
So again, in terms of what we can, can do at the East Port of Spain Development Company. The data, even as challenged as the data is in terms of the age of data that's available from the CSO, that's the only data that we have access to because we are not a data collection agency at that level. And so that data is showing us that we have high levels of unemployment within the communities, which is why we focus on trying to engage contractors and service providers from within East Port of Spain as far as possible as one way of boosting economic activity. We also, as I said, ask the contractors or require the contractors to employ some of their unskilled labor and skilled labor from within the communities of East Port of Spain to provide employment opportunities. And our various technical, vocational and training programs are geared towards upskilling the population to ensure that they can take advantage of employment opportunities within Port of Spain or outside.
You mentioned that before. Can I go to environmental sustainability, bearing in mind the environment of East Port of Spain? So make it specific so the public could understand.
Okay, so let me use two examples. One of which is I will use the term proliferation of pit latrines because the census data has shown that there is a high percentage of the population of East Port of Spain that is still reliant on the use of pit latrines for disposal of sewage, of waste. There are environmental implications associated with that, as well as public health and just human dignity issues.
In 2022.
Yes. That is a concern for us. And so over a period of time, we have been systematically trying to identify those households that are reliant on the use of pit latrines and to remove those and replace them with a flush toilet, with a septic tank, a shower and wash basin. A very simple unit that is not.
And you would assist these persons in achieving those goals, would you? In achieving that?
We actually construct the washroom facilities using local contractors and local labor to replace the existing pit latrines in East Port of Spain.
Chairman,
that's a project that's ongoing.
Chairman, I think as a committee, respectfully, I think if we achieve one goal from this inquiry, it would be, and Chairman, you can use, I will volunteer as the point person to liaise with this organization to identify areas in East Port of Spain and families who are in dire need of that transformation from latrine to flush services. Chairman, can I have, when we meet in plenary, if your members will be so minded that you make me the point person to liaise with East Port of Spain to have that implemented?
We will discuss that after the meeting.
Yes, Chairman.
Mr. Scotland, just to follow up on your question,
yes,
for my own clarification,
yes, Chairman.
Can the distinguished managing director share with us what was the percentage of citizenry in terms of numbers, both in percentage and in terms of raw numbers, when the East Port of Spain company was established, that were using this latrine kind of service or arrangement, and what has the East Port of Spain company achieved from their inception to the current time in bringing down not only the percentage, but give us and the people, not only of East Port of Spain, but of the citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago, what is the current number of citizens who are still using outdoor toilet or latrine facilities, and what is the projection within a specific time frame that the company has to eliminate that completely in the East Port of Spain community. Could you provide this committee with some raw data, both in percentages as well as in raw numbers?
Okay, let me say I don't have a working calculator in front of me, but what I do have is the figures. So from the 2000 census, we would have had the census showing that 5,210 households in East Port of Spain were reliant on pit latrines at the time. And I will have to pull the figure on the exact number of households we had at that time. But in the 2010-2011 census, that number dropped to 2,621 households using pit latrines. And there's great variation within the communities of East Port of Spain. So you have communities, some communities where it's very high, over 80%, some 45, 38%, and so on. So we know the communities where there's a higher percentage of households that are using pit latrines. We do have an application system, so people within the communities can come in, complete an application form. And over the years, we have been, I think we started this program in 2013 or 2014. We would have done just over 400 units in terms of replacing them with the flush toilet, shower, and the wash basin. That program has employed over 175 contractors who have been working on that using labor from within the communities.
Any ideas to a time frame that the East Port of Spain would have, either working with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development and through them with, let's say, international organizations like the IADB, the World Bank, and other international bodies that would come to your aid and assistance, that is the government, and through the government to you, East Port of Spain, to have this program speeded up within a framework that we can say, well, look, now we are in 2022, by 2025, 2026, we should be in a position to have 100% eradication of the pit latrine kind of facility and being replaced by the flush toilet internal type arrangement for the residents and households of East Port of Spain. Can you give this committee some projection that your company has?
Chairman, I would like to say that that information can be provided to you. At this time, the work we would have, the estimates that we would have done would have relied on the available funding, the funding that's currently available to the company. And based on all the things that we want to do, there's a limit to how much we can devote to that segment of our activities in each financial year. But between 2013-14 to now, we are just getting ready to start phase 10 of the program, and we have funding for approximately 45 units. We're hoping to be able to increase that funding so that we can do more, but it's a combination of the availability of funds and the technical resources available to the company that limit us in terms of what we can do and manage and supervise in a financial year. But as you say, with the collaboration of other agencies, definitely a program can be worked out and a time frame established for eliminating pit latrines in East Port of Spain within a defined period of time.
Yeah, Managing Director, could I ask you, between 2015 to the present time, would you say just about 45 were constructed or 90 were constructed as it relates to the number of flushing facilities that would be available to the resident? Do you have any numbers in terms of households that would have benefited based on the applications that they would have made, based on the execution that you would have engaged as a company between 2015 to the current time?
I cannot give you that off the top of my head. I can say that we are just completing phase 9, and phase 9 we would have had about 75 units. 75 units in phase 9. We did about 50 in phase 8. So I can go back and get the data, but right now I can't tell you exactly how many were done between 2015 and now. But we do have that data easily available.
Yeah, we would like you to put it in writing. we'd like you to put it in writing and submit it to the committee. Mr. Scotland, you can resume.
Chairman, if I may add as well, through you, Darianne Charles, just in my capacity as CorpSec, I would have also, from the MD, had a report that would have been prepared by her in October of 2019 that I could assist her with sending to the committee, because it has statistics, actual numbers, and communities, and what the LEP programs for each one of those phases would have reduced the number of fit latrines by each phase.
Okay,
so
thank you so very much.
That it was provided to the board at one of its board meetings.
Yeah, we would like you to submit that to the committee. Thank you very much. Mr. Scotland?
Chairman, through you, does the East-Port of Spain, how does the East-Port of Spain, through your strategic planning, and your strategic plan, I think, is 2017 to 2020, how are you going to tweak it to ensure that the East-Port of Spain remains relevant and current as it relates to your mandate and your objectives? Tell me that in a short 2-3 sentences.
How we will tweak it. I'm not sure that I'm clear on the question, but I think our mandate is about improving the quality of life of the residents.
And how do you intend now that we are facing COVID-19, more stringent economic measures, resources will not be as they were 5 years ago. How do you intend, or can you remain relevant if you can, and how do you intend to tweak to keep relevance as part of your modus operandi?
Right, so we are clear that relevance is established. The need remains, and the need is great, and we recognize that the need to do that. One of the things that we're going to be looking at in this new strategic period is how we deliver on that, given shortage of resources and competition for scarce resources. So we have to do a lot more in terms of social marketing and engaging other agencies, external agencies, because of the fact that our work is so easily aligned with the SDGs. We feel that we can attract the attention of some of the international agencies to assist in the work, obviously with the required approvals from the Ministry of Finance. And so that will be an area that we're looking at to collaborate more strongly with regional and international agencies, and doing a lot more collaboration with private sector and other development entities within Trinidad and Tobago to be able to deliver on that mandate.
Chairman, I know that time now is of the essence. We may be going into overtime. Chairman, I'm very grateful for your indulgence, and thank you all very much for the questions that were answered, Chairman.
Yes, thank you very much. May I ask the Managing Director, you did indicate to this committee earlier on that you are struggling to manage owing to staff shortages, and you have to double up on duties, leading to burnout and low morale. And you also mentioned in your submission that you have had to engage in short-term contract staff as well as consultants to fill critical administrative support and professional and technical gaps. Now, how sustainable is this, or can this be sustained? How long has this issue been plaguing this company? Could you clarify for our committee, please?
In terms of sustainability, this is clearly something that needs to be addressed if the company is to move forward to fulfill its strategic objectives. I think the demands on the company in terms of compliance, the need to approach things differently, just the sheer enormity of the needs within the area of East-Port of Spain have put a lot more pressure over the last few years. And we have lost staff that, because of the issues with compensation packages, we've not been able to replace the staff that we have lost. So it has not been a problem all the time, but certainly as we want to ramp up our operations to address the needs in the area, we are noticing the effects of it, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And I think once we can deal with the challenges that have prevented us from recruiting to fill some of the critical vacancies, then the company continues to be relevant and sustain and will be sustainable going forward.
Now, in terms of your submission on pages 20 and 22, under the item risk management, I would like to ask you, how long had the incident of fraud involving misappropriation of funds by a former employee has been going on for?
Well, just to correct, it is no longer going on. It was something that was discovered in 2017, and we took immediate steps to deal with it. I think the records show at the time that it had gone on for about 3 years before it was detected, but that issue has been dealt with.
So you care to remind this committee, just to refresh our memory, how much funds was involved in this whole misappropriation exercise? What was the number or the quantum?
$23 million in total.
Was 23. And were these funds ever retrieved in totality?
No, they have not. They have not at this time.
And the matter is before the courts of our country?
The matter is in the hands of the fraud squad. There's an ongoing investigation. So there has... Mm-hmm.
Sorry, no one, as far as you are aware, managing director, no one has been charged by the fraud squad in this matter, or there's just an ongoing investigation involving, as you said, some $23 million.
I'm not aware as yet that there have been any charges laid, and I would invite the legal officer to expand on what is appropriate given the fact that the matter is under investigation.
Yes. Yes, maybe the legal officer, conscious of what you have said, can guide the committee.
Thank you, Chair. And I note your initial question of whether it's before the courts. And in some areas, an aspect of the matter is before the court, and another aspect of the matter has already been presided on in favor of East Port of Spain. And so, yes, it's before the courts on an aspect of the funds, on a quantum of the funds, and the majority of the funds have been deliberated on in favor of the company.
Okay. All right. Any member of the committee, Mrs. Sagran Singh, Nizamali Singh, Ms. Dionarine, do you have any further questions you'd like to pose?
Sure, Chair. I actually have a follow-up question with respect to what you just raised, if you allow me. I'll try to be as quick as possible.
Yes.
Yeah. Managing Director, you said that immediate steps were taken to deal with the issue of misappropriation of funds, and as a matter of fact, the causes that led to the misappropriation of funds in terms of the weak internal controls in the financial system and your financial protocols and whatnot. So now I'm looking at Appendix 8, and given that you said that immediate actions were taken, how come we still see in this internal audit report for the period which is dated 9th of June 2021, how come we still see high impact areas being identified in terms of accounts payables and disbursements, saying that improved record keeping and document management is required as several requested documents could not be located? We have things like segregation of duties among key functions within the accounts payable process should be strengthened. Controls should be established for recording all invoices on P3. Procedures should be reviewed and updated to include all necessary payable expenditure activities to reflect current working practices. How come we still have these weaknesses? And I could go on. How we still have these weaknesses showing up in 2021 of weak internal controls?
Dr. Thomas, your mic is muted.
Sorry. In terms of the accounts payable and disbursements, I think that's what you're looking at, member?
Yes, the entire report, as a matter of fact, because there were several areas that were highlighted as high impact. So for both the accounts payables and disbursements, the financial reporting process on page 11 of this appendix, and also when you all went on to speak of the updates on the forensic investigating audits, you all indicated that there are several items that are not yet due.
Right. So if you look back at page 3 of that report, you'd notice the status as completed or in progress. So those items that were recommended by the internal auditor at the time were in fact completed at the time of this audit report, and that is indicated in the status column. If you look at the one you just referred to on page 11, the target date was July 2021 and August 2021. This report was dated June 2021. And so the status at the time was not yet due. And we would have found that in subsequent reports that some of those things were addressed. We did have the audit of the financial reporting and accounts payable sections, and I mentioned that the internal auditors would periodically do an update and tracker to ensure that those things that we undertook to improve are in fact being addressed.
Okay, so how soon do you expect the other items that are not yet due? What is the due date? The target date is July 2021 and August 2021.
Right. As I said,
past that date.
The quarterly reports, which I don't have in front of me, the quarterly reports for up to December of 2021 have been submitted, and we can review those reports to see what the status was at that time. I don't have those in front of me at this time.
Okay, Managing Director, I would urge you to treat this with utmost priority because we cannot have an incident that happened in 2017 happen again, especially in the absence of an internal audit department. East Port of Spain continues to outsource this function, and it is critical that we treat this with as utmost priority. The last thing that I want to touch on is with respect to the sole select for the consultant for the strategic plan, and I understand that the reason for sole selecting this consultant was because of the methodology, the balanced scorecard methodology that is required for this strategic plan. However, I respectfully still do not understand why a sole source select methodology was used. A balanced scorecard methodology is something that is commonly used by many consultants, and therefore it warrants a competitive process. So could you elaborate or explain to us what other reasons that could have justified the use of a sole source select in this case? Because PricewaterhouseCoopers, PKF, all these other audit companies I know, and I don't want to name any other more, but they all familiar with this balanced scorecard methodology and can complete a strategic plan using the balanced scorecard methodology. And also, as a matter of fact, I heard in your response that you said that you all reached out and asked for a proposal, and based on that proposal, you all went ahead. But how could you ask for a proposal? Was the proper market research done to look at the other companies to see what they have available? What are the other reasons that justify the use of a sole source select in this case? Because I do not think it was justified.
Okay. Point taken. At the time, it was timing, what was available to us, and as I indicated, it was more than just a strategic plan. The work that was done was not just the preparation of a strategic plan, but it was other work that we were looking at: the human capital readiness, the organization review and structure, and being able to align the overall strategic, the balanced scorecard methodology with performance measures for different units and departments. We would have included some training of staff in certain aspects of the work as well. That was the justification that we had at the time, and that was taken to the board and approved by the board.
Okay, all right. Chair, I wouldn't venture into the issue anymore. I just have one last question. I think it's important that we capture it. In Appendix 5, when you gave your update on the projects, there was one project, Point Pleasant Park Pavilion, that you all mentioned, and it said that when we asked of the status, you indicated that work on the project stopped due to conflicts between the contractor and the community. Discussions are ongoing to resolve the issues. Have this been resolved, and how frequent since 2013 do incidences like this happen?
The particular issue that was referred to at that time has been resolved. We have had to get a new contractor on the project. We did have to get a new contractor on the project. So that was done. And it's not been very frequent, but we do have a few incidents over the history of the company where we've had different issues that have arisen that have caused delays in project and project implementation. We understand the incidence of crime and violence in these communities, and some projects are affected more than others because of the specific location of those projects. Okay, so could you tell me whether this particular project was completed to date? The project is not yet completed. There are some ongoing challenges with that project. Yes. Okay, and how much funds were paid to the first contractor that had to be terminated, and what's the cost of the new contract? Right. So I don't have that information in front of me, but what we know is that, yes, and the new contract was just the value of that was the outstanding amount on the previous contract. So it was just that amount that we would have engaged a new contractor to complete the outstanding works at the amount remaining on the contract. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Managing Director and the rest of the team. Chair, I would pause because I will stop because I know we are pressed for time.
Yeah. Well, in closing, I want to bring this meeting to a close. And in doing so, may I ask the Managing Director to submit to this committee in writing the document that would have informed the company in selecting the consultant to develop this plan called a strategic plan for 2021-2023. Just give us the documentation, because you said apart from that plan, there were other elements. So we'd like to understand what the other elements in detail. And also, if you can provide us with a document or the document that would have informed your thinking as it relates to the engagement of PwC as it relates to outsourcing of the internal audit function, which, as you said, would have cost the company over a 2-year period some $250,000 or thereabouts. So we'd like to get some documentation in writing on this matter. I would like, on behalf of the committee, to record our appreciation to officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited, and their respective officials, the committee members of the PAEC, as well as the viewing and listening audience for tuning in to our inquiry into the operations and the audited financial statements of the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited for the financial years 2012 and 2013, respectively. With those few closing remarks, I would once again like to thank all officials for being here with us, from the areas that I've mentioned. May you all have a very safe and, well, a very safe evening. And we look forward, if it's necessary, to writing you shortly for clarification on questions that we have been unable to pursue at this meeting because of time. And we look forward to your responses to those questions when they reach your respective desks. So thank you very much, officials, and you are now excused. Thank you very much.